The Aotearoa Derby was also very impressive, and Auckland FC were the victors. 2-0 over the Wellington Phoenix. It was a fantastic game to watch, and as I said before, it was kind of brutal. Like there were shoulder charges, a couple of high boots. Very, very enjoyable to watch. You did mention the mishap, the goalie mishap. Oluwayemi just passing it to the Auckland FC player. Who was that?
It was Jake Brimmer who
Jake
scored
Brimus.
both goals for Auckland FC.
He did, but the second goal came from someone you've been talking about for a couple of years now, Loatoma. Loatoma. Not to be confused with the Louis Slippers 10-pound bag. But Lewis Toomey impacted that game. Came off the bench, bit of razzle dazzle on the left wing, I believe. Got round one of the. It was a tough spot because I think it was one of the Japanese players for the Phoenix was defending. I think he found him. I think it was the striker who found himself, or the
Yeah, Shige, I think. Yeah.
he found himself defending it right back, and Lewis Toomey took him on, and then passed it across the goal. I've got a nugget for you. Wellington Phoenix.
Do like a nugget.
In the 2023-2024 season, regular season, 27 games, the Wellington Phoenix conceded the fewest goals in the A-League, 26 goals. The only other team to concede less than 30 goals were the Central Coast Mariners on 27 goals, who finished first. Wellington Phoenix conceded the fewest goals in the A-League last season. The only team in the A-League this season, right now, who is yet to concede a goal is Auckland FC. And there is one common factor between those two bits of information. And that is our Lord and Savior, Alex Paulsen. I like to me that's undeniable. And I came about that because I was like, they were talking a lot about the Auckland City defense, and the Auckland City defense as a unit is good. Like, they are a good defensive team. But it's pretty obvious considering that Alex Paulsen was a factor, a large factor, a big factor in a excellent Wellington Phoenix defense last season. You could say the best defense last season. And he's backing it up this season because Auckland FC haven't conceded a goal. Looks like Central Coast Mariners have conceded one goal, but they're down in ninth. And they've got 3 draws. They are the only other team who has conceded less than 2 goals this season. Auckland FC haven't conceded a goal. There's a clear link between Alex Paulsen and really good football and defense.
That there is. And it goes beyond, because I don't think he's had to pull out the highlight saves that you saw him doing, certainly at the start of last season for the Phoenix. He hasn't had to save a penalty yet. He hasn't had to, well, I was going to say he hasn't had to face a penalty, but facing and saving penalties are the same thing for Alex Paulsen. So, but like, that just goes to show other aspects of what makes a great goalkeeper. And I think he's been extremely tidy with his feet, as we know him to be. That's not been an issue for Auckland FC. You don't build up from the back quite as much as the Phoenix do, but it's still a very easy out for those defenders. If they're under pressure, just pass it back to Paulsen. He'll deal with it. You know, he's extremely confident in those things. And the way he organizes the defense in front of him is also pretty handy. And he's just a calming presence. If you've got a goalkeeper like that, you know that you're not going to have to worry about dumb things happening, and you can just focus on what you're trying to achieve. And I think across the board, though, that back four for Auckland FC, it has also, those guys have all been really good. I mean, I love seeing Nando Planaka just turn up and be like, yeah, I am one of the best defenders in the A-League from day one. It doesn't matter because it's been a little bit hard to judge how that would go because he's got the international experience. So you can say he's played big games and against very good teams. But then also, like, how do you compare this to him? Mostly, like, most of his senior club experience has actually come in the League of Ireland. It's like, well, that's a good league that produces good players, but is it like that level across the board? It's just hard to compare them and hard to know how he would find his feet. Not been a problem. He's been great throughout. I mean, Hiroki Sakai, you kind of know what to expect. Dan Hall, you know what to expect. Proven A-League ball of that man, and Francis de Vries as well been really good for them. They haven't changed that back four at all. I mean, they do like to do a little bit at the end of games if they're winning. Chuck on Tommy Smith for the last 2 minutes, coming in as the closer and sorting things out like that. But I mean, the defensively as a whole, that team has been superb, hasn't conceded a goal, hasn't even really given up that many chances. I mean, the Wellington Phoenix gave them as much trouble as anyone has. They gave them more trouble than Sydney did, aside from, Sydney did have a disallowed goal, but it was also disallowed for a reason, right? The Phoenix should have scored. Was it might have been Shige again, or was it Nagasa? One of the Japanese guys,
Costa had the
Costa
shot.
had one or two as well.
Like, he got the cutback and then he just hit a one-timer, but that was in the first
Well, I'm
half.
thinking of the header as well, where he bounces. I think it was a Shige. He goes for a diving header when the ball's like at ankle height. Like, stand there and kick it, bro. Like, you'll be fine. And he bounces it over the crossbar. And yeah, Costa had a couple chances as well. The Phoenix had their moments. They could have been a 2-0 win for them.
The Costa chance, like, to me, that sums up Paulsen. Paulsen doesn't need to make a tough save because he's in the right spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Costa kicks it straight to him. But if you're not Alex Paulsen, you might be out of position and then you have to, like, make a diving save. And it's like, yeah, Costa might have been able to slot it either side of him. But Paulsen's always in the right position. Paulsen's always organizing the defense. Paulsen's always composed under pressure. Like, that dude's bloody impressive. What'd you make of Tuma?
Louis Toomey, this is one of those ones where it's like, I feel a little bit vindicated when a dude comes in and does. Like, I've already had that with Liam Gillian in this team as well. So those are like the two guys who I would have said, and I think did say like multiple times, like, these are the first two players I would like to see signed up by Auckland FC. Like, we know they're going to go for bigger names, like as they did. There are a few All Whites that were probably rumored from. So Cam Howison was an obvious one that they had to get on board. I sort of took those ones for granted, and we're like, yeah, but I want to see this team also sign some of the young guys who haven't had a consistent professional gig because Toomey was in the Phoenix Academy. Didn't get to the pro ranks, but he sat on the bench once or twice, I think, for the first team. But yeah, those are the first two names I would have mentioned. Two guys who've been excellent in National League stuff for a couple of years. They did go out and sign them, and then when these guys have played, they've been really good straight away. Like, this is just it's nice and vindicating for myself, but I think more to the point, it is vindicating for like the caliber of Kiwi footballers. The ability, like, to say that, and these are not the first two examples that have proved this as well. The Phoenix have got a bunch of them. Even go back to someone like Roy Krishna shows the same thing. Alex Rufer, even like Tim Payne, certainly. Like, the best players in the New Zealand National League are good enough to play A-League, and they proved that. Brian Kaltak, back-to-back A-League championships, like, just straight in there and winning stuff. Like, the best guys in the New Zealand National League are good enough to play A-League, and it's the same with the Women's National League as well. They're playing like Devon Jackson scored a goal on debut for Newcastle. She played for Canberra last year. She moved to Newcastle. She scored. Like, the best players in these domestic leagues are good enough to play in the A-League. They're getting signed to play in the A-League, and they're really good straight off the bat, proven what we already suspected, which is that they're good enough. This is a lovely thing to see. And Louis Toomey, the latest one, he's probably more of a central attacking midfielder. He would rather have been playing in the Brimmer position, but because he's got a great first touch, great close control, sneaky dribbler, not like crazy fast or anything, but just got such good close control that he can skip past defenders. He's very clever and that kind of stuff. Direct in his own way too. Like he will take on guys. He's not afraid of doing that. He's not going to turn and pass the ball back if he's got an opportunity. And I thought he, first of all, just excited to see him get a debut after not featuring the first two games. As a scholarship player as well, let's not forget. But I thought when he came on, even before he set up that goal, I thought he made 3 or 4 like contributions. There were smaller little things like this is scoring 10 runs for the Black Caps in Mumbai kind of things. Like he goes past a defender, or he holds onto the ball under pressure, or he puts across whatever it was. Like I just noticed him 3 or 4 times after he came on straight away, being like, "Hey, that was a good impact from Tumi. Like, he did a good thing there." And he did another good thing. Okay, he set up a goal now. We're going further and beyond. But yeah, a great little contribution off the bench, getting his bang for his buck there in small minutes. But that's how you earn more minutes, is by coming on and doing that sort of thing. So love that. And that is if the scholarship guy is doing that, you've had Liam Killian on a scholarship contract as well, starting 3 games in a row. Like there's some serious depth at Auckland FC right now. I'd argue they've got more depth than the Wellington Phoenix have right now, and that's part of why they won that game, is because in a game that for 88 minutes or whatever it was felt like a 0-0 draw, a good tactical, feisty, and not a bad 0-0 draw in any way, like a enjoyable, exciting game. There were chances, there were great, big tackles, there were great moments, but it just felt like it was going to end up as a 0-0 draw. Auckland FC got 2 goals from one substitute and assist from another substitute, right? And then 1-2-0. Their bench did make the difference in that game.
And it's like, I thought the Wellington Phoenix were pretty good. But again,
they were, yeah.
To your point, as the substitutions start to roll, and like it's kind of similar to the Kiwis, you're asking emerging players to perform at their best in a elevated arena. So I don't think there's too much negativity directed from me to the Wellington Phoenix for their efforts. I think they did the best they could with where their squad and team building processes are. I just realized, looking at the A-League ladder, every team is FC. Like Auckland FC, Melbourne Victory FC, Sydney FC. Like, yeah, we're playing football. You're in the A-League. We get you're a football club. I don't think you need to
sort of goes without saying,
yeah,
right?
like it's like
except for the Auckland FC, Sydney FC things where that's like a specific name. Fair enough. You don't have anything else to your name. You will keep that in so it sounds like a football team. Melbourne Victory FC is a waste of space. Like, you save this.
But it's every team. So I think it's a waste of space for everyone. It's like in the NRL, you've got the Melbourne Storm RLC, Rugby League Club.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's a football thing. The footballers, they love their FCs. They love their Uniteds and whatnot. What was I going to say? So you're big on the contracts, the scholarship contracts and everything like that. It's to me, from the outside, it's the same as Black Caps contracts. Like, dudes are playing for the Black Caps without a contract. It's the same as the NRL. Everyone trips over the top 30. But dudes are playing in the NRL from outside the top 30. So I think, and they've got their development contracts. They might be a part-time in the New South Wales Cup, but they got a match payment bonus and they get promoted. Like, you're big on tracking the contract status for the Phoenix and Auckland FC. To me, it seems like the contracts are just the means to pay the player. They don't tell you anything about, well, they inform you of like rankings, because some do have scholarships and some don't, some have full-time, whatever, but it's just a means to have a bigger squad and to pay the players. So like, because as you're saying, the Auckland FC are getting strong contributions from players on the scholarship contract bracket. So it's like, well, to fans, to me, there's no difference if you're on a full-time, whatever, A-League contract or a scholarship contract. That is just how the club is organizing their squad, because the Warriors and the best NRL teams, the Warriors are not a best NRL team, but they are doing this. They give a lot of game time to players outside the top 30. So it's just kind of like, this is how we're building out our depth everyone needs some sort of contract, and we need more than 30 players. So it's just like, this is how we just organize it. But to, like, again, to your point, Auckland FC, good imports. Bremer was apparently the man last season or something.
Season before that with Melbourne
Right.
Victory, yeah, he was player of the entire competition, Johnny Warren medalist.
Good imports, all that stuff. But the core of Kiwi players, whew, you got Paulsen, you got Nando, Franny de Vries, Cam Howison, Gillian, Rogerson. Like, they're all just young Kiwi lads. And my observation, aside from the Paulsen defense, I think Auckland FC is their best. Sorry, and Toomey, because he just played and impacted the game. I think Auckland FC is the best when Cam Howison is a bit deeper in midfield. Because in the game against the Phoenix, Cam Howison started further up the field. And then when Bremer came on, he went deeper in the midfield. And I think Cam Howison, A, he's a first 11 player. And B, he's better in the, like, getting deeper in the midfield where he can be a bit more creative, a bit more playmakerish, playmakey. And he can also get forward to play like a, what do you call it, the number 10 type of role. But Cam Howison, to me, he's been the most impressive because, I mean, he was just playing for Auckland City year in, year out in Aotearoa. But I've kind of enjoyed his work for Auckland FC as one of the low-key, most influential players in that team.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was like the best player in domestic football for about 5 years. So he's playing for Auckland City and being amazing for them. But it's not always easy to see how that would translate to the A-League because, yeah, they're like the way that Auckland City play often involves a lot of just like crowding around the other team's penalty area. So if he's playing as a deeper midfielder, he's still in the attacking zone all the time. Like that's kind of the vision of Cam Howison you're a bit more used to seeing from the Auckland City stuff. And Auckland FC, it's not going to break like that for him. He's started the last two games as an attacking midfielder in that Jake Bremer role, the role that Jake Bremer started with. And then I think Jake Bremer was sick last week, so couldn't play much. And then Howison just held his spot. Yeah, I think his best role might be more as an ace. So as the like midfielder who defends and attacks, is the sort of go-between where you got Verstraeder as like the defensive midfielder, Gallegos currently playing that role, Howison a little further forward, but that'll become Bremer, or maybe Toomey will get some goes there at some point. You know,
but in football language, does it go 6, 8, 10? Like 6 defensive midfielder, 8 slightly more attacking, 10 creative attacking midfielder.
Yeah, basically, you got it there. But so yeah, like Cam Howison can cover all of those midfield spots, but he's not necessarily the first choice in any of them, but he might be the next best choice in all of them, if that makes sense. Like, you're not going to play Verstraeder as a number 10. You're not going to play Bremer as a defensive midfielder, but Howison can kind of do the lot of those things. So I think he'll end up starting more games than he doesn't without necessarily being a starting player, if that makes sense. I'd like to see him at the 8 a little bit more often, because I think his passing is very good in so many ways, but he'll do the steadying possession stuff, the passing out of trouble, just being able to spot a one-time pass, move it into space somewhere else. He's also just a really creative passer, but I don't necessarily know if he's the creative passer or when he's like getting rushed up the top. So yeah, we'll see what his role develops into. But it's another example of how they've got a good squad, is that they do have these players who maybe not quite as versatile as everyone is in the Wellington Phoenix team at the moment, but Auckland FC do have a lot of options for these different positions. And they are fairly, like, the Phoenix are quite fluid. Auckland FC seem quite structured under Steve Corica. Like, the roles are the roles. If you're the left winger, you're sticking on the left wing. You're not popping up on the right side, or you're not hanging out in front and swapping around with the striker too much. beyond just the natural stuff of how the game flows, where you might just find yourself there chasing the ball or whatever. But it's not. Yeah, they're quite structured, and they have options across these different positions. They have a deep squad, and the reason they have a deep squad is because they have scholarship players who are good enough to be better than scholarship players and are able to start A-League games or come off the bench and set up crucial goals.
Who was your favourite Phoenix player in the Derby?
Well, Alex Rufer, under an injury cloud all week, and then they rule him out a day before, and then on the day off, he's like, "Nah, let me at him. Let me off the chains."
That seemed more like shenanigans. That seemed like Derby
I think
antics.
there was some shenanigans, and the ruling him out aspect, I think that was a bit premature when obviously Rufer was trying to be ready. But he did, it was a real injury because you saw him suffer it at the end of the Perth game. Like he was getting treatment after that game finished kind of thing. Like he was hurt. It was definitely something he was dealing with, but it's not just the fact that he played. It's how he played. It's like shrug off the injury and just be an absolute menace. Like there's a dog out there on the field chasing everyone around, hounding, and just leading by example in the way that Alex Rufer does. He's it's kind of crazy to think how he's got to being this type of player. Where just even if just a few years ago, a lot of people probably wouldn't have been too disappointed if he'd just disappeared from the team if they hadn't been re-signed or whatever. It took him quite a while in his career to find the perfect role for him, but once he found it, he's not about to let go of that. And he is really such a crucial player for how the Phoenix play now. So big time deals there from Alex Rufer. I will say, though, it warms the heart to see Marco Rojas popping up again as well. Like just a few minutes off the bench, didn't really get to do anything. I was wondering what they're going to do with him. He played as the second striker, so what Ishige was doing alongside Costa Barbarosas, but they'd kind of messed with the formation a bit by that point anyway, trying to chase goals, and then they messed with it some more, having to definitely chase goals after conceding, which led to them conceding another one. So, yeah, it's still sort of up for grabs what they're going to do with Rojas, what the plan is to turn him into the most influential player for the Wellington Phoenix attack, which is what the hope was and what the hope will still be. But just to get him back on the field for that first step was pretty cool. That was nice, and I will say though that is maybe another aspect of the Auckland bench being more effective than the Phoenix bench, is that even with the Phoenix had young players, the Phoenix also had returning from injury players, Kolakovsky being another one of those. So guys who weren't necessarily ready to do 30 or 40 minutes when they might have wanted to change the tempo a little bit earlier than they did. So another example there of how Auckland FC kind of had a little bit of an advantage there, but I don't think that is an advantage that's necessarily going to carry on when they meet again in Auckland in 2 months.
The Phoenix ended up losing 2-0, but I think I was genuinely impressed with the Phoenix. As you said, like the players coming off the bench were either youngsters or they were players returning from injury. The Phoenix stayed in the contest for most of the game. The Phoenix fired a few shots. They had their attacking moments. They were able to shut down multiple Auckland FC attacks. And if you're realistic about where the Phoenix are at, in the same way I want to be realistic about where the Kiwis are at right now in 2024, like the Derby lost things, losing to Tonga stings. But if you take a step back, you'll be like, okay, that was a decent effort from the Phoenix. They've had a decent start to the season, and we know the Wellington Phoenix, like Finn Roa, Conchi, played a lot of minutes in that midfield of a Derby. Like that's going to be beneficial to him. And there's like giving these Phoenix play, like, because there were still some youngsters in the defense.
Yeah, Matt Sheridan played 62 minutes. You mentioned Conchi got 55 minutes. Stan Sutton's probably above youngster status at this stage, but yeah, there's even off the bench you had Nathan Walker got some time, didn't he? By the way, on Nathan Walker, who signed a scholarship deal, so he's got the upgrade from no contract to some contract, which is probably the most significant of the contract upgrades you can get.
There you
From
go. There you
nothing to
go.
something. Do you remember a Black Caps leg spinner from the very early 2000s? He played for, I think, Auckland and ND,
Brooke
one or the
Walker.
two or more, both, called Brooke Walker.
Yeah.
That's his dad. I didn't know that.
Righto.
It's
Fair
Nathan
play.
Walker's dad.
Brooke Walker, leggy. He was. I can't pretend like I've got many memories, but I remember that phase of cricket. Like
Yeah, same.
he was in the mix, so shout out to him. He was in the mix. It's also so my point with the Phoenix, a lot of youngsters who will benefit from that derby. Same with the Kiwis. Like there's a lot of parallels there. A lot of young players for the Kiwis, they'll be better off for that experience against Tonga. A lot of the Phoenix players, young players, they will be better off for that derby experience. And I personally do not see a whole lot to worry about with the Kiwis or the Phoenix, despite their losses this weekend. But we all had fun, and that's the best thing about the A-League Derby and Pacific Championships Rugby League. We'll save the National League stuff. You're doing your National League yarn, so people can check that out. We might touch on those things in the bonus podcast on Thursday, as well as any other notable Kiwi sports things that pop up in the meantime. Let's just take a quick.
We'll save A-League Women's as well with the Wellington Phoenix, because suffice to say, their first game looked like they were quite undercooked, especially at the start. And when you change formation basically in the first half, in the first game of the season, I think that game needs to be a little bit of a write-off. But they did fight back quite nicely in the second. I think it was 4-2 away to Western United, but it was it was a game where we need to see what they do after this game to get an idea of where the team is at, because it was very much a false start.
Let's take a trip around the world. Milly Clegg played her first game for Racing Louisville. What's your hard and fast breakdown about Milly Clegg with Racing Louisville?
Well, it took until the last 18 minutes of the season for her to finally get a game. It was a long wait. She was disrupted, the injury through preseason that was lingering from her previous A-League season. There was she went away for the Olympics, then she went away for the Under-20 World Cup, so she was in and out for Racing Louisville anyway. And I think because they'd signed her for a 3 or 4 year contract, it was very much like the first year wasn't the important one for them. They're trying to win games now. They're trying to make playoffs, which they didn't do, but they were making sort of veteran attacker kind of trades throughout the season. So there's word in the state where Milly Clegg was going to get the opportunity to play a lot. Wouldn't have minded seeing her pop off the bench once or twice in her previous 8 other unused sub afternoons, evenings, whatever. Could have done that. It wouldn't have been too hard. They didn't use all their subs every game. You could have given her a debut at some point, but it was a pretty cool one to get off the pines for the last 20 odd minutes of the season. They went into their last game having already been eliminated. They weren't eliminated as the round started, but not all the games kicked off at the same time. So when they kicked off, they were already out. And because they were already out, they didn't play very well, and they conceded a couple of early goals, and that meant that even the result wasn't in a great spot. So there was no reason not to throw her out there, and sure enough, eventually they did. It was a cool moment for Milly Clegg to make that NWSL debut. I think she becomes the 8th New Zealander to have played in this league. Macy Fraser also making a debut earlier this year. Not sure what's going on with Macy Fraser at the moment because she hasn't played since the Olympics, but Milly Clegg definitely is a player who Racing Louisville are building into the future with, and so to get a nice little cheeky debut gives her some confidence heading into preseason next year, and we'll see how she's been leveling up in training when she gets a bit more leeway to play. Hopefully doesn't take until the last 20 minutes of next season before she finally gets a game. We'll see what happens, but yeah, great milestone there for Milly Clegg, big moment in her career.
Katie Kitching, 2 goals for Sunderland. What's the hard and fast breakdown on Katie Kitching?
Yeah, the first goal was a banger too. Outside the box, shaping up a little bit on a defender and just smoking it in. And that was to spring a Sunderland comeback victory as well. They scored like in the second minute of the game. Can't remember who they were playing, but they were down. Then they equalized, and then Kitching scored twice in the space of like 3 minutes to lead them on towards, I think it was a 4-2 win. So good from Katie Kitching, who has been getting in amongst the goal contributions in the second tier in England for Sunderland this year, as has Hannah Blake. But Hannah Blake wasn't the one who stood out for Durham this week. It was Nikki Foster. Blake actually played off the bench, but she got subbed on at halftime because they clearly realized they'd made a mistake. Subbed on Blake on the wing and subbed their striker as well because they were 1-0 down against Blackburn Rovers, who they should have beaten quite comfortably. And then they did beat them quite comfortably because in and amongst that game was Mickey Foster making her starting league debut for Durham. She's played off the bench and she's started a cup game, but this was the first time she's started a league game. And interesting on that, didn't play left back. She played defensive midfield and looked really good there too. It was getting a lot of touches, a little bit erratic with the passing at times, but also you can see the range of passing was a big deal, and the two-footedness really helped being in those kind of areas. And she scored an even better goal than that Katie Kitching one I was talking about, where she shapes up on a defender, cuts, smokes it past the keeper, top corner, get in. And yeah, that was a victory for Durham in the end. They came back to win that one. So a couple of very good goals in the this is English second tier and in the women's championship. So good stuff there.
And then
Ben Lane scored a goal as well.
In the top tier,
Bindon scored a goal as well, both in FA Cup early rounds.
In the top tier of England, the one and only, the Woodsman of the Forest continues to score goals.
I'm just realizing how many of these goals, they were all just players based in England this week.
We do this every week, discussing Chris Wood goals, and it's I wouldn't say it's top tier in England, but it's not quite top tier status of just taking a moment and being like Aotearoa is awesome as sport. But if Chris Wood keeps scoring goals and Nottingham Forest keep being good, this is some crazy Kiwi footballing areas to go with the derby, to go with the girls, ladies, women banging goals as well. Elijah Just last week. Oh, there's so much cool Kiwi football stuff happening. What's the latest on Chris Wood?
Well, the latest, I guess, because I'm running out of stuff to say. Like Chris Wood scored another goal. Do I just repeat the same statistics in Flying Kiwis this week, but just update
you
them
can
by
tell
1
me
week?
who he scored the goal against and how it happened and that type of stuff,
Well, this is why I'm saying I think because he scored against who did they play? It was West Ham, wasn't it? They won 3-0 against West Ham. I think at this point it's less about I think the most important part of what Chris Wood's doing becomes less about what he's doing as an individual and more about how these goals that he's scoring, and he's up to 8 now in the Premier League from about 11 games. He's scored in 6 consecutive games for club and country, so including those 2 all-weights games. This is not just Chris Wood having a nice little spell for a team that's battling around the mid-table. This is Chris Wood being the top scorer and the overwhelming currently the most important, because even Morgan Gibbs-White has been their best attacking player for a little while. He's not even been playing a lot of these games. He's been in and out. They've rotated guys around him. They switched up their wingers. Callum Hudson-Odoi is in good form, but Chris Wood's scoring all the goals. For a team that currently sits third in the Premier League, this isn't Nottingham Forest in relegation battle, and these goals are to snatch important 1-1 draws against Fulham or Crystal Palace or whatever. He scored to set them up for a 3-0 win against West Ham to put Nottingham Forest up to third on the table. He is not the only guy doing well in this team. They've signed a Serbian centre-back, Milinkovic, who has been awesome and to help take their defence to another level. Their goalkeeper, finally, they seem to, I think it's Matt Sells, who's Belgian. They've finally got a goalkeeper they can rely on, which has been a trouble for a couple of years for them. Their midfield's looking great. They've got an array of attackers and they've got focus. They know how they want to play, and they've figured out how best to get Chris Wood involved, which doesn't mean giving Chris Wood 30 touches a game, 40 touches, 50 touches. It means maybe he only has 15 touches, but he gets 2 good chances per game, and he's probably going to score one of those. That's often all it takes. He's also a good defensive presence. He wins a lot of aerials, so he gives them kind of like an anchor. You're in trouble at the back, hoof it up to the big man. He knows how to hold it up or flick it on to a winger or whatever. Like there's a clarity to what they're trying to do right now. And manager Nuno Espirito Santo has done just brilliant things at getting them into that place. And Chris Wood is a key figure within it. Like, imagine if he's playing Champions League next year, with Nottingham Forest. It's not likely. I think there's a very long way to go. We're not even about a quarter of the way through the season or something. But they're in third place right now. Like third place in the Premier League, I think they went above Arsenal this week. They're way above Chelsea or Manchester United, right? So pretty crazy stuff.
And big boy Bindon, what's the latest with him? Tyler Bindon, Reading FC.
Yeah. FA Cup first round. So they played a lower league team. That allowed them to do a little bit of rotation. This is a Reading team that's still under a transfer embargo, so they can't pay money to sign any players. So it's really important for them to bring through young players, and the Cup is obviously an opportunity for them to give some experience to those young guys. You're chucking out a bunch of youngsters. You still need some leadership around them to set things up. So we'll just give Tyler Bindon the captain's armband, right? Captain's Reading for the first time. 19 years old. The goalkeeper, he got subbed. He only played like 60 odd minutes or something like that. So they sub him off for the end. The goalkeeper in his team was a 35-year-old. So Bindon gets subbed off and hands the captain's armband to the 35-year-old who, like, Bindon was 2 years old when their keeper made his first professional appearance in English football. So, but he was captaining ahead of him. So these things, there's just, sometimes you get red flags about athletes. With Tyler Bindon, it's just green flags everywhere. Like, this is another one. They picked him to be the captain in a team playing alongside a bunch of youngsters. Some of them were just the same age as him. He's the experienced guy, but these guys are just the same age as him because he's doing this much so young. Doesn't even turn 20 for another couple months, and scored the first goal in a 2-0 victory. Like, it wasn't just captain, he also scored a goal as well. A clean sheet, let's not forget that bit too. So it's just another one of those little, like, stop and take notice of what crazy things Tyler Bindon is doing for the age that he is. It is like, he might not be a Reading player by February 1st. It might come to the point where they're already ready to cash in on him because the reputation is there. Or if you're like, those footballing scouts, that's a whole industry. You don't hear about it the way you hear about it with, like, basketball scouts or whatever, but those databases exist. If there's a teenage player who's playing this many minutes for a team, Reading are doing quite well this year. They were relegation threatened last year, but they're doing pretty well this season. Like, a guy of that age and that profile doing what he's been doing, all the top clubs are aware of him. Like, the top scouts, they know this guy exists. They have his name jotted down. That doesn't mean anything will happen, but they're aware of him. And so that's definitely transfer watch when January comes around. We'll see what kind of whispers come out from Reading, because they do need to sell players generally every window in order to keep the finances on, to keep the lights on at the ground, because they don't have any money from their owner. So they're in a tricky spot, and that puts all of their players in the shop window, not just Tyler Bindon, but Tyler Bindon might be the most saleable asset. Is a terrible way to refer to a human being, but as a footballer, that he might be the guy they can cash in on the best because of what he's doing, because of the reputation he's already building, and what he's just achieved in general in his career.
So just in men's football, in recent times, we've had in New Zealand Derby, Auckland FC versus Wellington Phoenix, and we got Chris Wood on fire in the highest level of English Premier League football, and we have Tyler Bindon captaining Reading as a 19-year-old in English football. Woo! And there's a lot of similarities just there between Tyler Bindon and Isaiah Katoa, and what he is doing for Tonga as a young leader for Tonga. Does that Emiliano Tade, is he playing for Western Springs now?
Yeah, and reckon Auckland City. I thought he was done after last season. Like, he looked like he couldn't even run anymore. But then he moved to Western Springs, and now he's just been, like, back to his best. And he doesn't have to play as much for them, but he's playing more than he did for City, and he just destroyed Auckland City. Not as good as Reed Drake. If you watch the Reed Drake run, you see he, like, trips up Mario Ilic from behind at one point, and Ilic grabs him by the collar and flings him around. It's scenes you don't normally see in a football pitch, and they both got yellow cards, which was shocking. Like Illich should have been sent off from the get-go, but never mind. And then when Reed Drake scores, he goes and grabs the ball from the goal like he's going to run it back to halfway, like they do. Gets up to Illich, who's walking back from like the edge of the box, changes his mind and just gives the ball to Illich instead. He's, here you go. Illich just stands there and lets it drop. It's a funny one.
I just watched that, and we're going to keep that in for the podcast. Little bit of